Okay, Brett, it's time to get going. Let's go ahead and start our disassembly process. Okay, so your dial has a date of 08 and your case pack has a date of 08. So that means these have been paired up for 54 years. Pretty amazing. I'm going to work on your dial just a little bit just to see if I can get it cleaned very gently. I will try. I'm not going to do anything destructive, if you will. Just try and lightly clean the dial, see how that goes. Very dirty. Okay, well that is the teardown completed. The movement looks good. There's some minor dirt buildup, which is to be expected because of the open crown situation. The only thing that gives me a little concern with regard to the movement is your date ring here. These are notoriously susceptible to being tweaked and bent, and it looks as though somebody has tried to flatten this one over time. And if they're at all out of flat, they can bind and the day will not change over. There's not a big powerful finger that pushes this along. It's pretty weak. So it has to be perfect, but I'm not sure. We'll see when we get there how well it performs. So a couple things to do. We're going to jewel your arbor ports as we do. Going to check your barrel. Got a lot of outer edge wear here on your barrel. That could be from the arbor being loose in the barrel itself. It's not terrible, but I'm going to check it for sure, see if it's within spec. And then we'll go from there. Okay, we'll be back. So Brett, I'm not certain that I have terrible news, but somebody at some point in the past decided they needed to glue this bezel in place, which may mean that it is unable to keep itself on the watch. You see this here? This is a layer of epoxy or glue that is here on the surface. I will be able to remove it, but I'm not certain why. Usually that implies that someone had some trouble in the past and decided to take a somewhat less corrective route. It may be that the crystal is incorrect and that the bezel wouldn't fit down properly. That's what I'm suspecting. I will have a correct crystal here. But we're going to try and be gentle as we take this out. Preserve as much as possible. Okay. This has ripped your L-shaped gasket. Boy. All right. Unfortunately, I think this is toast. I gotta find one of these. Wow, that's unfortunate. That certainly does not need to be glued. So that has failed, unfortunately. Okay, I'm gonna keep going here and see what I can make better. Okay, Brett. Well, we're out of the cleaner. Your movement looks pretty good. I don't see any issues so far. We're gonna check all the components as we go and just make sure that everything's ready. You have a new jewel in your lower plate here, your main plate, and it also has a corresponding jewel in your bridge that goes above that, and we'll see that in a moment. So we're ready to start reassembly. Okay, we're back running again. That's always a good sign. We did something right. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and check and see where we are on the time grapher. We'll be right back. Okay, Brett. Well, I had to go back in and make some adjustments to the position of your hairspring relative to your balance wheel. It was all the way adjusted over, and there wasn't any adjustment left. So that generally means that something has slipped or somebody tried to do an adjustment in the past. It's not a big deal. It's just something I had to go in and change. So we're doing pretty good. I'm going to have to make some adjustments here to get things back in beat. Okay, well, I think that's the point where I'm going to let this rest for a bit, see which direction the numbers go, and perhaps have another look in just a bit. Sometimes lubrication needs to really settle itself in, and yeah, there may be a couple little tweaks here and there that I need to do, but yeah, we'll come back and have another look. Okay, Brett. Well, numbers are looking great. There's a little bit of fluctuation here, but nothing that we're not going to be able to adjust away as we get it in the case. Couple things, you needed a new pallet fork, which is pretty typical, but overall, really good shape. So we're doing good. Okay, Brett. Time to finish. Okay, well, there it is. There's your dad's 1970 6106 701 7107. Sorry. Yeah, it was an interesting process. The watch came in. Needs were great, but not impossible to meet. I was able to do a certain number of things to sort of help out what we had noticed was a problem. So just to point out a few things, came in, of course, without a crown and a stem, and now you have one, along with the gear and the spring that's involved in allowing the inner bezel to turn. So now that does what it's supposed to do. So that's nice. We got a full rotation here. Essentially, cosmetically, I've left the watch almost entirely alone.
What I did was I was able to lighten your loom just a little bit. It was pretty far gone, and it still basically is. A few of them are a little better than others, but with a loom that's that dark, it's really tough. Somebody at some point put a different hand on your minute or on your second hand, and I left that as it is. I really didn't have one to change it with that was appropriate. So that is the way you saw it when your dad wore it. The bigger issue with your case, the biggest issue with the watch was the case, actually. So this bezel is precarious, let's say. So the actual bezel that holds the crystal down, it had been badly bent and was held in with glue. Somebody glued it down, rather poorly in fact, because they had put a crystal in that was incorrect. So this crystal, and it also led to problems with your gasket, this crystal does not have the right profile for this case. It's too tall. And what happens is, if it is too tall, you can kind of see where it's supposed to be. That's a correct crystal. What can happen is that the case and the bezel come together as sort of clamshells. So they sort of overlap like so. So one's at one angle and one is at the other angle. And when they lock together, that holds this friction, but like an interference kind of fit with the case. Now, I found a replacement bezel, but it's not here. So it's coming from overseas. I didn't have one in my stock, and I figured, well, maybe if this doesn't hold for you long term, if it pops off, if you recognize that it has popped off, we can replace it with one that's on its way here. It's not going to be here for quite some time. So I figured, for now, let's go with what's working, and potentially have to go with something a little bit more long term in terms of a solution for you. That of course is up to you. You can do whatever you like. If you'd like to eventually send it back and just have a new bezel put on, I can do that. But regardless, that's something else that we can deal with down the road. Right now, it's working. It's holding everything in place. It's doing its job properly. So I figure that's pretty close to being as good as we're going to be able to get it. Not much else to report. Movement is doing really well. Numbers are really good. They're very, very solid in terms of just being quite reliable. One little thing, one part that needed to be replaced. Where has it gone? There it is your pallet fork. So you had a bad pallet fork. This right here. This is the thing in the watch that actually goes tick-tock. Click, 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 goes back and forth, pivots, and it meters out the power from the mainspring through the train to your balance wheel. That has worn jewels, and so that was replaced. Here's your mainspring arbor port, jewel or bushing, which is now a jewel. So all of this will come back to you. It'll stay with the watch. I have your bracelet. It's been cleaned, and you can either put that on or replace it if you'd like. I have a few suggestions, and we can talk about that in a minute. Let's go just through the function of the watch. It hacks as a 6106C should. So we just went through day and date change. We can, now that we're in a safe position, we can change the day and the date. And that happens with your crown again. You push in to change the day and date. You can switch between English and Spanish, and you can also change them independently. So we're back to Sunday. Pull out to hack, of course. Push back in to run. Cosmetically, there's not much I can do about your dial. It's just that's the way that these in effect deteriorate if they've been moist or wet or seen a lot of intrusion of moisture. I was able to get your hands to shine, which is nice, so they look a lot better. Case I just cleaned, no polishing, just sort of a good clean with a with a material that allows me to get some of that haze off. Of course, the case has been fully torn down. You had a little bit of rust. There's a ring underneath of the crystal that sort of puts a spring force on your internal rotating ring. That had some rust, and that kind of bled over into your rotating ring. It was a bit dark. I cleaned that really well. I think that came out quite nice. It's actually a really attractive watch at this point. And it's all working, which is great. In terms of strap choices, you can go, of course, with the Speidel OMB if you want. That's up to you. You could also choose a rubber strap, and I have some fairly inexpensive Speidel period correct, what I would call a flat vent. So this is a rubber band that I actually use on my divers, which I think is quite nice. It's thin, it's pretty pliable, it has a look that's sort of consistent with these, and they're not very expensive. They're really remarkably affordable, and I have plenty of these in stock if you'd like one. Just to kind of show you, how a bracelet might look, a sort of straight link bracelet. So this has a straight end link that you can put into here. I'm not sure what style or what you really want to go with here. This is not a Seiko original, it's an aftermarket. It's just one that I had sort of laying around that I thought I could use to show you what one would look like if you wanted to go that route. So that's the way it would sort of sit on the watch, and you could, of course, do it here on the top. Do it as you like. Anyway, so that's sort of what you might be able to do if you wanted to put a bracelet on it, other than the spring bracelet. Let me know how you want to proceed. Of course, we'll get things settled up on the service and the repairs and the parts. There's a few things here that we need to just include as part of the process. Your movement had a couple little needs. It wasn't really anything major. Your hairspring had been messed with a little bit in the past. I needed to make some adjustments in order to get that right, but otherwise, a pretty solid running 6106. It's a really good movement. I like these. They're pretty easy to do, and they have lots of functionality, which is really cool. All right, Brett, well, thank you again, and I want to apologize again for the long delay in our process. I'm glad we finally got this back to a running state and a functioning state, and cosmetically, as good as we can get a watch that had, some real needs, but certainly, I think it came out great. Okay, thanks again, and thanks for watching.